welcome everyone to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I'm your host, Bob Kirwan. And as usual, on most Monday afternoons, we have another edition of the Learning Clinic Meet Your Candidates radio show. This afternoon, I have in the studio with me Aaron Beaudry, who's running in Ward 9.
Yes, hello, how is everybody out there today?
Yeah, and this is Aaron's second time on the show. One of the things we're trying to do is make sure that everyone who's running for council and for school board and for mayor, that everybody has a chance to come in and do a show, do an interview, try and give people in our listening audience an opportunity to get to know a little bit more of the issues and get to know a little bit more of the candidates that are running. The primary purpose is to make sure that as we're going through the process and we're going through the campaign, that everybody in the City of Greater Sudbury can have a good idea of what the underlying issues are in this election and moving forward. Quite often we hear about things like transit and infrastructure and moving railways and economic development, but we never have a chance really to talk about the issues. And I think the best people to talk to are the candidates. So Aaron, this is the second time you've been in. I think you were in a couple weeks ago. We've been taking a look at some of the major issues and some of the major concerns that people in Sudbury are talking about. And one of the things that I've been able to find as I'm talking to different candidates from different wards is there's a lot of commonality in terms of our issues. Even though we're all running for individual wards, that a lot of the issues they're common,
Yeah.
no matter where you go. Anything new that we haven't discussed before that has come up, or anything new on the campaign trail, or the people you're talking to that are surprising you at this point?
Well, I wouldn't say surprising. I think a lot of the conversations that we're having are about lowering taxes and getting spending under control. You know, there's a lot of wasted time and energy as well. When you look at some of the things that council's been discussing at City Hall right now, especially the last week with their in the last meeting that they had, you know, with the taxi wasting, you know, an hour or so, or almost an hour talking about some issues that shouldn't really be taking that long to talk about. They gotta get right down to some real city business, you know, get the issue sorted out.
I've been hearing that a little bit from a lot of different people, and as I'm talking to different candidates, and it does seem as if, as a city council, and it's probably not just something that's happened to this particular city council, it's probably happened over the years. It's just that we seem as a group to really get hung up on, I don't want to say minor issues, because the taxi issue is a major issue, anything to do with funding or budgeting is major, but we seem to get hung up on the smaller items and spend a lot of time doing things that really should be a quick decision.
Yeah.
It's I don't know how you solve that. Are there certain things that we should be letting staff take care of and we step back on, or?
Well, there has to be accountability. So, should we let staff make some of those decisions? You know, there has to be a level of accountability there as well. You know, like when if they make a bad decision, there should be something that can be done about it. You know, like even what the rebranding came in. They went out. They made the decision to rebrand, and it's my understanding that a lot of people aren't happy with what was used to rebrand it. So, how do we ensure that when we do send something out to staff that we like what we're gonna get, you know? And what do we do if we don't?
I guess that really gets into this whole issue of giving people a task, giving them the parameters, and then having the ability and the willingness to step back and say, we have to accept what you gave us. If we gave you the authority to go out and do this, otherwise, I think what we run into is, and it's not just in politics, it's in business. What you run into is this whole worker productivity problem where people are gonna say, well, it doesn't matter what you tell me to do, it doesn't matter what I do, when I bring it back to you, you're gonna change anyway.
Yeah,
So why should I put a whole lot of effort into doing this? And you really walk a fine line as councillors, because we're the ones that end up hearing the complaints.
yeah,
If staff does something that the public is not happy with, then the first people they dump on are their councillors, their elected officials.
yeah,
So you really, I don't know what the answer is, but it does seem as if a lot of time is spent dealing with issues that could best be left to be handled by staff and possibly by committees, where we're missing out on a lot of the bigger issues. And I know, I think you and I talked about some of the bigger issues before, but for the sake of people who haven't been listening before, what do you think are the major issues that council has to address over the next 4 years?
right now, I think one of the really major issues, and it kind of caught me off by surprise, is the new arena that they're looking to build. I think that's gonna become a big election issue, not so much for the councillors, but for, I think, the mayor. But that's a big issue that has to be dealt with in the next 4 years, and hopefully it's a new council that does make the decision whether to go ahead with it, or to go ahead with it in which manner that we do go ahead with it. And I think that's gonna be a major issue as well. And obviously, some of the spending down at City Hall is another major issue that's gonna be, that's gonna have to be addressed.
Let's go back to that arena situation for a minute. I know you've got a hockey background, and my kids all grew up playing hockey, and I know it's not just hockey, there's ringette, there's figure skating, and we're talking about an arena that could be a multi-purpose
Oh, yeah, definitely.
area. I think what I've heard a number of people talk about though, and I've heard this not just this year but over the years, is that the City of Greater Sudbury, with all of its amalgamated outlying areas, was never designed for centralization, especially when you get to things like arenas and community centers. Is that when you take a look at the arenas in Hanmer and Belcarron and Cape Riol and Walden and Coniston, when you take a look at where all those arenas have been located, they were located for the specific community areas that they were in. And even in the arenas in Sudbury, are dotted in the different sections of Sudbury.
Yeah.
To put a multiplex or a 4-pad arena where everybody from the outlying area and everybody can go to, because you've got a place where you've centralized your services, it may be cheaper to operate the arena, but it defeats the purpose of these settlement areas that are 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes away. And I heard one person even said, when we're talking about conserving fuel, and we're talking about the environment, the idea of building a place where everybody has to drive to kind of defeats the purpose of protecting the environment and reducing the use of your vehicles.
Yeah, well, I think with the Fourplex and things like that, you have to have a central location. People come in from out of town. A lot of business is made from when there are tournaments and everything that come in from out of town. So you want to have one central location where they could go. You have hotels around that location where they can stay. There's nobody that's coming to Sudbury wants to be traveling a half an hour in between to different areas of the city. That's just the reality of it. It might not sound nice, but that's the reality of it. So it's more beneficial, I think, to the local economy to have, a centralized area for arenas and, your hotels and everything around those arenas. Like I'm a big supporter of a Fourplex, and I think that it's long overdue to have one, a 4-pad arena, not a Fourplex, sorry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it would be nice to have them, but if it's going to take away from the arenas in Hanmer and Belcarron and Cape Riol, and it's gonna take away from the arenas in Walden, and it's gonna take away from the smaller arenas. If in order to put up a 4-pad arena, you have to close 4 pads in the outlying areas.
Oh, I don't think that we have to though, because if you look at it, I looked at one report, I think it was, I think we need 9 arenas to accommodate the city of our size, and we have 7.4 arenas, or whatever the study had said. So we need more of those things, right?
Yeah, depending on, which studies you look at. It's, that I think is gonna be a really hot button topic when we get into the discussion at the table.
And you have to look at too, where is it being used? You know, is there more of a demand for an arena in the city where you have, more people are gonna go and use it rather than somewhere else, you know?
Well, and it's all, it all comes down to, it's gonna be speculation.
But it has to be done right, and you know, I'm really in favor of privatizing for the arena, you know, a public-private partnership, something to that effect would be really beneficial. I think you'd have, if you look at other arenas down south that are public-private or private, they have, you know, some like restaurants in the arenas and stuff like that, where you can go, you can stay, you can eat, you know, and then the city can get property tax revenue off of it. They're not getting it now, you know, so.
No, I mean, it does have, there are an awful lot of benefits to having someplace like that to go, and I'm sure that it is gonna be something that comes to the table again. You're right, we have to do it right, we have to make it big enough, so that it can support the concerts, and I really don't think another 5,000 seat rink is gonna be big enough.
No, I know, I think that's kind of a waste of money to do that. You have, if you look in, and another thing too is if you look in London, in 2002, they built their arena, a 9,000 seat arena, and it has luxury suites and that, and they spent 42 million on a 9,000 seat arena to build in a public-private partnership, right? So, and we're looking at spending 85 million, that's without any overhead on a 6,000 seat arena, you know, so even the talk about spending that kind of money on something that's not even, won't even be as beneficial to our city as, say, the one in London was to theirs for half the price, you know, there's.
Yeah, that's gonna raise a lot of objectors.
Yeah, it is, you know, so we have to be sure that we're gonna be able to do it, you know, make it so it's affordable in a sense, where our cost of it to build it is gonna be in line with other communities that have built those types of arenas. So there's no reason we should be building something for 85 or 100 million if another city can do it for half the price and do it public-private, you know?
Yeah, the public-private concepts work, like you say, that the programs work if you've got, if it's viable for the business that's coming in, and if you've got the willingness of the council to give up a little bit of
Their control, yeah.
Which is always an interesting question.
Because at the end of the day, you know, it's not, you're not taking any jobs away by putting it in the private sector. You know, there's still gonna be people there, they still have to have people do the restaurant, if there's a restaurant in there, you still have to have people cleaning, you still have to have people doing the Zamboni or any of the maintenance in the arena, so it's not, you're not taking away any jobs by putting it in the private sector. What you're doing is you're allowing more freedom, and you're allowing more opportunity for property tax revenue.
Yeah.
Which you're not getting right now, so I don't see really how it's a negative.
Yeah, I think, I'm gonna make a note of that's probably a topic that I should look at over the course of the next couple of months, and bring in 3 or 4 people from the recreation area and talk about the pros and cons of a multi-pad arena. It would be an interesting discussion to have 3 or 4 people in. We had people from the senior friendly or friendly seniors Sudbury group a couple weeks ago, and it was interesting discussing the 3 members of that organization, talking about what they're looking for in the future from council, from the perspective of seniors. And I think when we take a look at the recreation people and talk about what they're looking at in terms of the multi-pad complex, it's an eye-opener to hear what kind of leadership they're looking for in council. And and how they expect it to be paid for.
Yeah. No, and that's it, for me, I'd rather have, if, not have to pay for it if I don't use it. You know, you have your user fees, and if it's public-private, you're not really, your property taxes don't necessarily have to go up to fund something like this. Whereas, you know, if it was strictly public, then it's gonna cost the taxpayers a lot of money
To subsidize.
to subsidize it, which shouldn't, you know, and it's not fair either to the people that don't use the arenas or don't have to go in there, you know?
Yeah. It is good, let's get on to the topic of taxes. What are you hearing about taxes? Are people really, are they upset with the fact that taxes are going up? Or are they upset with the fact that they don't seem to think they're getting good value for the money they're putting out?
I think it's both. They see that they're not getting the services that other communities are getting for less taxes. Now, where you look at the outlining areas and things like that, there isn't a lot of services that they get that you know, that they would expect to get for the amount of taxes they pay. Yet in Sudbury, the mill rate is higher, so even people in Sudbury are paying a lot more than and not getting the services in return. So people are talking about how, yeah, it's nice to say that you're gonna cut taxes, but we still wanna have some of the services that we want, you know, but you can't, we aren't getting either of them right now, so that's where the conversation's going.
How do you deal with that if you get on council?
Well, you have to make the certain cuts, you know, and you have to really prioritize what's important to the community and what taxpayers are willing and what they wanna pay for. And that's part of my campaign, is I think, you know, when we look at all the vacant buildings in the city, those are vacant buildings that we could be selling and then collecting property tax revenue off of, you know, and that's just one way to help the increase, stop the increase of the property taxes that we are getting.
So you're almost saying we have to be a better business.
Well, we do, well, yeah, because you have a $500 million budget every year that you're going with, right? You can't not be a better business. If it was the private sector, we'd be bankrupt if we keep adding like that, you know?
So we have to operate, this is more, I'm just thinking out loud, we
Yeah.
almost have to operate more as a business would, and stop thinking of ourselves as a public sector organization that gets grant money. But we have to be more business-like.
Well, we have to be business-like in the sense that we have to be smarter where we spend our money, and we have to prioritize our needs a little bit better. We can't offer everything that through the community that's already being offered through the private sector. And if we can save ourselves, you know, even if we save ourselves $4 or $5 million a year in the budget, that brings our property tax increase down, you know, under the rate of inflation, which is something that we should be looking at.
I hear a lot of people talking about the idea that we have to do a review of all of the departments and figure out, you know, which departments are overstaffed and which ones are understaffed, and move people around. And I'm getting the impression that people think that we're not getting the kind of productivity out of a lot of the people.
You know, I at the end of the day, it's not, I think that we are. I think that the people that work there, I worked before for the region. When it was the region, I was in engineering and construction services there, so I see the people do work. They do what they're told, you know, it's generally you go to work, you do what you're told. What we're missing on is we're not holding the people accountable who are making the decisions.
Okay.
I mean, you have, around Christmas time, it was -50, and I have a road crew out there filling in potholes in -50. Now, who told that crew to, obviously they're the workers, they're just come to work to do their job, you know, and you see, well, who's making the decision to send them out to fill a pothole in -50 when you know the asphalt isn't gonna stick? It isn't, you know, does that boss need to be retrained to know not to send your workers to go and do that? Because that's a big waste of money. So where are we gonna hold those people accountable, you know? That's what we should be looking at, is stuff like that, because I don't think the workers are unproductive. Everybody goes to work to do their job, you know?
And I've been saying it, you know, that nobody goes to work not to work.
No,
So maybe we're not doing it wisely, maybe we're not doing it efficiently.
no, and then you can't blame the worker for that, right?
No.
Then that's one thing, if you do look at, there's major problems with, I guess, some of the way that we do operate our city in that sense. Like who's sending people out to do things that are costing us a ton of money, or painting bike lanes in November? You know, why are we painting bike lanes in November? We're not gonna use the bike lanes till April, and you're gonna have snow and salt and chewing up everything that you've done, so there's a big waste of money there too. I mean, why are we wasting money like that, you know? And who's accountable, who's telling the people to do that? And the people that are directing the workforce to work and do things in that manner, well, the stuff like that has to be, those people have to be held accountable, because ultimately they're working for the city, the taxpayers, right?
And the elected councillors are the ones that are being held accountable.
Yeah. So they have to direct
Yeah, perfect, good
Yeah.
point. Taxes, the fourth ad, any other major things that we definitely can't overlook moving forward?
Well, when it comes to taxes, you know, we gotta look at selling off some of our inventory when it comes to real
I
estate.
think we got too much real estate. Well, you're in a real estate business.
Yeah,
Does the city have a lot?
well, and it only makes sense where we're holding on to these buildings or whatever, you know, and we're not collecting any revenue from it. So it's costing us money on the maintenance and the upkeep of these places, and we're not getting any property tax revenue from it. So we have to be able to get rid of that and quit holding on to things, and hopefully we can get some revenue coming off of it, and that'll help our property tax rates at the end of the day.
You're also pretty close to construction, developments, things like that. Are we as open a city as we like to think we are when it comes to?
Well, I don't think so. I think we need to, with our development fees, I really think there's an opportunity where you have certain businesses in the community that wanna fix houses or fix, multifamily units, make more housing, but we're charging a pretty ridiculous amount of money, you know, even to just get started without even building permits, you know, somewhere up in the areas of $9,000 per unit, just to get something in, just to start. That's without your building permit, without even putting a shovel in the ground, you know. So if we wanna be able to reduce some of our budget in some other areas of the city, we really have to look at how we're encouraging people to build these buildings, or how we're encouraging, you know, to get the rental units up there to a time where, you know, it might stabilize the rent, so we could have more people afford the rent, the market rent in the city.
So I guess having a high development fee when there's no development doesn't really earn you any revenue.
Well, no,
either.
it doesn't earn you any development at all, you know, and you have just for an example wise, you have a dilapidated duplex or a triplex in an area where you're not really making any property tax revenue off of these buildings, and you have a lot of them. Well, why aren't we encouraging, you know, the renovation and the upkeep of these buildings, and even expanding of these buildings, where at the end of the day, when they're reassessed after all the renovations are complete, you're gonna be bringing in more property tax revenue off of it, you know, and once there's a number of vacant units, you know, the rental prices might actually stabilize, and then people might be able to come off of the subsidized housing and actually get into rental where they can afford it themselves, you know, where we don't have to subsidize that. So that's, it all comes down to, it's a great big chain reaction at the end of the day. And
Are these large development fees, because everything gets passed over to the consumer?
well, it does, yeah.
So it increases the cost, or
Yeah.
it increases the rent. Is the development fee increasing the cost of these units to the point where there's not enough demand? Or is it preventing the development of these units to begin with?
I think it's preventing I seen in my personal experience, it's preventing the development
Okay.
right
So-
now.
so-
I've seen it, cause there's a margin of profit that a person has to make, right?
Right.
To make it feasible for them to undertake these projects, so.
And then I guess for an individual, there's a certain amount of rent that you can't go over, or you can't afford it either.
Yeah,
So the demand for these units, the demand for the rental units and the demand for the low-cost housing, as far as you're concerned, is there. It's just that we're at that point where it's not enough to be profitable, like, it's not profitable enough for businesses to build, and for them to build, it's just a touch too high for the people to buy. Is it kind of on that bubble?
well, I think that, the development fees are hindering the progress of being able to do it, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to ask a certain amount more to the person that's renting it. So you're looking at, if you're gonna develop say a duplex into a fourplex, now you have to add an extra, $20,000 before, you just have to add that onto your budget, so that's gonna take you a substantial amount of time to pay that back, and it's not gonna be you paying it back, it's gonna be the renter, right? So
Right.
are you gonna add another $200 a month to the people's rent who are gonna move in? And,
How much is too much?
how much is too much, so it's making it not affordable for
Mhm.
the people in the area. So some of the people might have to go and, get subsidized housing or things like that, but if we could keep those fees down and keep it so rent can become more affordable for the people that are renting, we might be able to take an opportunity to look at some of our other budget problems that we have.
Is our vacancy rate for rental units too low for us to look at reasonably developing our business base in town? Like, I don't know enough about real estate, but there's an area that's trying to develop new businesses and growth in their workforce. Do you need a certain level of rental units for people that are transitioning in to these new businesses? Like, have you noticed that in the market when you're looking at it? Is our vacancy rate too low? Is it?
I don't think it's too low, I think, it's too low in the sense that the prices are gonna be inflated.
Okay, so it
Because
increases the price.
yeah, it increases prices. I mean, you still have, there are areas of the city, that have a 4% vacancy rate, which is still extremely low. But you have other areas of the city that are at 1%, and 0.5%, 1%, and you're looking at those places, well, you're not gonna get anything in those places. And if you are, it's gonna be expensive,
So high demand, high rents.
yeah.
Are you hearing much about transit, public transit?
Not, at the beginning of the campaign, I did hear a little bit about it, with a couple of people that I talked about. They were, just concerned about, the times of it and the accessibility of transit. So there has been a little bit of talk about it, but I haven't really ran into that head on so far.
In your particular area, in Ward 9, describe briefly what it covers.
Well, it covers south of Regent, so you have the south end, you have Long Lake, Tilton Lake area down by there, across to Coniston, or should I say Wannup, like if you come out the south end up to Wannup, across to Coniston, and out to Wanapate.
Okay, so you basically got the
Southeast,
the two different sectors, like in Ward 5, we've got all that area at the corner of LaSalle and Notre Dame and Cambrian Heights.
yeah, it's a really
Tracks.
big ward. I think it's mixed up,
Yeah.
actually.
It is. And then when we go to the valley, in Valcarran, Guillettville, McCrae Heights, and Blizzard Valley, you've got two different groups of people that have two different needs in terms of transit.
Oh, yeah, no,
And-
definitely.
And I can see that the Sudbury portion of Ward 5 would probably rely more on public transit because it's so dense, and it's probably easier to get into on the routes, whereas up in the valley, you've either got to be on the main drag
Yeah,
or be able to walk to the main highway, or you're taking your own car.
yeah,
And I think the whole different social structure of those two different groups makes it difficult to even have a single transit policy. I remember a few years ago, we tried having an inter-valley route, and they ran it for a full year. And I think, I even think when I say 90%, that's too complimentary. I think at least 90% of the time the buses were running empty
Yeah.
because the people just didn't find it